Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and with Red Bull pulling away from the pace that Ferrari have been capable of these last few races, it seems that finally upgrades are coming to the table here in Barcelona. Ferrari believe they could be worth about 0.3 of a second, which would be enough on current race pace to put Ferrari back ahead of the Red Bulls. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that, on the verge of 1500 subs as well, just love to see it. Firstly, this from Rob Watts actually I thought was kind of incredible actually, because I mentioned this statistic briefly yesterday, but 45 overtakes were had in Miami. Like, I did not see that many overtakes at all. I don't know how many we saw on the actual broadcast. Maybe like 10 or something, I'm not really sure. Like, apparently there were a load of overtakes. Second most of the season, pretty sure Bahrain had 58. This race had, the joint most. And definitely this whole weekend, there was, it wasn't the best viewing spectacle, to be honest. From home, not just the race coverage, but also the entire, the way it was dealt with. Arguably, it wasn't ideal. Of course, the surface also was causing some problems for the drivers. They weren't particularly happy about the stones, the pebbles that were being used. That was causing issues for racing, and as it turned out, actually it wasn't too bad in terms of overtaking, but definitely left something to be desired. The driver said it was way short of what is kind of the F1 standard. But also this was a talking point as well this weekend, because as Adam Cooper points out, a lot of good things about Miami, but teams and sponsors not happy with the quality of service in the Paddock Club, run locally rather than by the usual F1 organisation. Tickets are 13 grand, people expect 5 stars. First world problems, I know, but lessons to be learned. Now he goes on to say that he underplayed this yesterday. Senior marketing people said it was an absolute shambles, and that wealthy F1 newcomers or potential sponsors will not be coming back after a bad first experience. Not generally a good sign for F1 that if you're inviting, potential sponsors, this type of stuff to the Paddock Club, the service and experience is just terrible for them, they're going to say, okay, screw this, I'm not coming back to F1 anymore. So definitely there were some positives of this weekend, but on that front, not exactly ideal. And even as Adam Cooper says, I realise not everyone's sympathetic to the VIPs who had a bad experience, but if that's a CEO or a billionaire that was potentially going to sponsor your favourite team or driver, and I was, getting out of there, everyone loses as a result. And apparently a story of a few years ago of Jim Ratcliffe, who was in a similar boat for Ineos, and of course that's been a partnership with Mercedes for quite some years at this point. This was another matter that's kind of going on right now, some drama. Andretti, of course, they want to come into Formula 1, but they can't really come to a relationship or to come to an arrangement with the FIA. There's been some talk about this the last few days, whether somehow the F1 teams can break away from the FIA, whether it's even needed anymore, like, are the FIA actually necessary for Formula 1 to go well? And especially because they're charging extraordinary entry fees and stuff in order for new teams to come in. Like, unless Andretti can buy out another team, and Haas have said they're not for sale, they probably won't be able to come in unless they have to pay some extraordinary fees to enter. And even then the FIA effectively have this kind of cartel arrangement where there's only 10 teams, that's going to be how it is. So it seems like they might even be trying to take Liberty Media to court or whatever they're planning to do here. But yeah, definitely some drama that's going to continue, I'm sure, over the coming weeks and months. Let's dive into this then kind of word that Mercedes held on this. I was kind of surprised that Wolf was so positive really about the track, but he actually gives it a 9 out of 10 weekend. You can say what you want, it was the first in Miami. Sometimes tracks get it wrong. This one didn't get it wrong, and generally the drivers seem to really enjoy the track. George Russell said he really liked the track, if not for that final chicane, which the drivers didn't generally like. But yeah, good DRS zones, even the track breaking into turn 17 gave great racing. It was very difficult to break into turn 17. If you lost the line, you lost a position or two. The drivers will say, that's not optimal for racing, but for entertainment, I think it was pretty good. If the coverage would have been a bit better, to be honest. And well, as he says, all in all, I would say that for the first race, 9 out of 10 on this front. But yeah, speaking of Mercedes, just a few interesting words actually from Toto Wolff about this, because there has been some serious questions. Will Mercedes ditch the no side pod version of their car and go back to what they had at the first Barcelona test, where they had a more traditional, more conservative approach? They brought this version in. People were worried their car would be 1.2 seconds quicker than the rest of the pack at the moment, whereas actually it's the Red Bull that's 1.2 seconds quicker per lap than the Mercedes right now. These are the words he has to say they thought was interesting. He basically says, look, I wouldn't discount anything. They might go back to that version of the car. It's not out of the realms of possibility, but for now we need to give our people the benefit of the doubt. They have produced great race cars in the past. We believe this is the route to go. Barcelona is definitely going to be a point in time where we're able to correlate what we saw in February and gather more data. I'm also annoyed about the same thing about gathering data and making experiments, but it's physics, not, mystics, effectively. You have to unpick the data. Some interesting words here about Mercedes' floor. He says, if you walk through the grid, you can see that our floor edges stick out much wider than anybody else's. That gives us a different way or much more scope of possible instability. So reckons the floor really is the key change. The thing is, it's not just easy as swapping out the floor. That, of course, is going to impact the other components of the way they sit in the car, and it's a bit of a complex problem to fix. But if the floor is the key issue, which it probably seems to be at the moment, because of course the front and rear wing seem to have some impact initially on the practice session on Friday, after that kind of went downhill again. As Wolff says, that's where our concept varies. Clearly the Barcelona launch car was much slower on paper. We need to find out how we can make the current car work predictably for the drivers. That's the thing, if they can get a predictable car, but what would they really prefer? A car that on its day can actually compete with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris at top, but is going to be very difficult to actually coordinate that, or a car that's, half a second a lap slower similar, but is predictable week in, week out. Probably they're going to prefer the car that can actually compete and be up there with the top, because otherwise they're just fighting for 5th, 6th all season, which is obviously not where they want to be. He also goes on to say, we're committed to the current concept, we need to be. We are faithful to it. We're not looking at the lady next door to see if we like it raw or not. As a matter of fact, we need to understand before you make a decision, where did this one go wrong? Basically saying, look, if this car does end up to be a failed concept, a failed solution, they need to make sure they 100% understand why it doesn't work before they move to the other concept, because otherwise they can move to the other concept, still be 5th and 6th every single race, and actually not learn anything about next year. So I thought that was interesting from their front. But of course also Ferrari, right, they've been falling back at the pace of what Red Bull are bringing the last couple of races. Of course in Australia is a very different story. Ferrari way ahead of the pack, but from Imola, Red Bull brought some upgrades. They brought some kind of a lighter car as well. They dropped a few kilos, and also some aerodynamic changes that have made them, at least at the present time, quite a significantly bit faster than the Ferrari has been the last couple of races, at least in terms of Verstappen versus Leclerc. And well, as kind of Bonotto was saying, they're basically a couple of tenths a lap faster than the Ferrari is right now. And that will continue to hurt them, especially on tracks where there are long straights where the Red Bull is definitely significantly favoured, and Ferrari are going to need to be incredibly fast in the corners if they want to have a way to win the championship this year, because that straight line speed of the Red Bull, the lack of drag that it seems to have, is of course a key problem for Ferrari to deal with. But as Juliano De Kessa comes out with, apparently the upgrade for Barcelona is significantly in the works. They really haven't done all that much so far this season, and the Barcelona one, they've been working on a few different things, new rear suspension, some other changes as well, that they do believe could give them some more flexibility and be worth up to about 3/10. This is what the article says. Of course it's translated, so it might not be perfect, but yeah, some new evolution is in the works at the time of writing. Not certain whether it will be completely ready for the Spanish trip, but of course Barcelona, close to Italy, they can probably make it happen regardless. They're looking for an anti-porpoising solution, waiting for a new rear suspension, which has been on hold for a few weeks. Effectively, the idea is with a few changes and tweaks they're trying to make. I think kind of from like an aesthetic point of view, it's not going to look that much different, but they believe they're going to be able to lower the car much further, right? Because that's the thing. The porpoising that's affecting a lot of these teams right now means that a lot of the cars, a lot of the teams, especially Mercedes, have to run the car at a higher ride height than they would want to. If they can lower that at all, the porpoising might look the same, but because they've got it lower to the ground, they can get more grip in the corners or more downforce in the corners, therefore more grip in the corners, and therefore be much faster. That's probably where they need to improve, because they might not be able to, compete with Red Bull on the straights, but if they can be rapid in the corners on a track, for example, like we saw in Melbourne, with not too many crazy straights, then that's where they can actually, win these races rather comfortably. And we can get to a point where it's kind of Red Bull versus Ferrari every single week, and it depends on the track as to who's going to win the race, which would be kind of interesting to see how that goes. Not only the aerodynamic innovations, but for a complete package of innovations, which according to what has been learned, could be worth 0.3 of a second, which would allow the performance counter overtaking of the F175 up against the RB18, and also like a 2 kilogram lightening, they reckon, of the package, which is going to get the Ferrari down towards the weight limit at 798 kilos, which certainly the team say if they can lose another 2 kilos, like gain some tenths in terms of aerodynamics, then all of a sudden we have a competitive season on our hands once again. We already have a competitive season, but some are concerned right now the Red Bull would just continue to move away from the pack for the rest of the year. This also was mentioned, the fact that a new rear wing that was rumoured to actually be getting used for Ferrari in of course Miami this past weekend actually wasn't used at all. So they're seemingly saving that one for Barcelona. Apparently Mercedes bought in their new wing, of course you could see it on the car, which made a difference on Friday, but not really for the rest of the weekend. But yeah, some significant changes seemingly coming to the Ferrari come Miami. They're certainly going to need it if they want to overhaul Verstappen and the Red Bull. And this is the thing, this is the race pace by mean. So the mean race pace for the drivers looks like this. This is of course the fastest 10. So Verstappen on average did a 133.2 pretty much, and Leclerc was a 133.35. So pretty much 1.5 tenths in it on average throughout the entire race. You can actually see here, I thought it was really cool, this is over on f1pace.com, but the first stint on the mediums, Verstappen and the Red Bull was actually much quicker. But on the hards, the stint towards the end, the lap times were basically the same between both drivers. And it was only the last few laps where Verstappen pulled away and Leclerc pretty much gave up and realised he wasn't going to be able to do anything against Verstappen after attacking him pretty hard early on for those first few laps after the safety car restarts. But on the hard tyres, the pace seemed very similar. And actually the difference here in terms of the mean is only 1.5 tenths between the two of them over the course of the race. So with Ferrari upgrades, that probably puts Leclerc once again in a stronger position. Of course, it's not like Red Bull are going to stop bringing upgrades either, but Binotto's made it clear that he reckons look, they're going to have to run out of money in this budget cap at some point or another. The Mercedes, just to mention them real quick, they were again in terms of Hamilton's pace. In fairness, if you look at the hard tyre kind of stint towards the end for Hamilton, that was much quicker than they were doing on the mediums, but still around about a second off what the leaders were doing at the front of the pack, right? Which certainly is not really making any progress for them compared to where they were at the start of the season. A couple of things to finish off the video actually here. Eduardo Freitas will be making his first kind of debut as the race director here for the Spanish Grand Prix. I believe it's pretty much been Niels Wittich so far, and just this as well I thought was rather interesting. Verstappen is the first driver since Hamilton to win at different venues within a country. Of course, he's won at Austin last year, won at Miami this year. Hamilton the most recent driver to do that with wins at at all these tracks. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.